Hello everyone. Welcome back to Sustainable Living with Shilpa Reddy, powered by Planet Green Farm Natura, a new beginning to your life. Today, I have with me an inspiring actor with an amazing sense of thought towards life and environment. Let's make this CocoWorks Sustainable Star of the Month a little fun and yet knowledgeable. Let's welcome my dearest friend, Adivi Sesh, on my show. Hi, Sesh. Thank you so much for being on my show. And I must tell you, you fit right into this space because in every aspect, I see the way you live extremely sustainable. But I want you to talk about that.
I mean, I didn't know it was something that people in India generally they look at it as something to aspire to. I think you're one of the, in that way, definitely one of the pioneers in the last couple of years to actually try and make it sort of a sense of a lifestyle rather than it just being a fad that upscale people do or something
Right.
like that. So,
Hence, you're here because I'm sure people get inspired when people like you talk about and share as to what you do in your life,
yeah,
again, towards sustainability.
yeah. I mean, see, the thing is, I think it started when I was a kid. I remember being in Vizag. I was about 7 years old, and I had this question for my mom. I said, "So what happens when we take this trash and put it in the trash can, in the dustbin?" And she said, "Oh, garbage wal teeskeltaru." So I said, "Okay, where do they take it to?" And then I kept asking that question, like, what happens to it eventually? And then at that time in Vizag, you didn't have any treatment of sewage or treatment of trash or anything of that nature.
When was this? I mean, you're talking about when you were what?
Yeah, when I was 7 years old.
Wow,
So,
that's a
yeah,
wonderful question.
But it was from a place of curiosity rather than caring about the environment, really.
Okay, okay.
And you wonder, and then eventually people were just like, yeah, we bury it in the land, or we throw it into the ocean. That's what I was told.
Oh,
And
okay.
somehow that didn't sit right because I thought, but isn't that where the fish live? So that's how it began, I think, really.
For you to be asking that question when you're 6 and knowing that it's not sitting right is I think you have heightened conscious for some reason at that age.
Yeah, but I have plenty of lessened consciousness in other aspects of life.
Let's see.
Losing things all the time, that sort of thing.
Okay. And I've seen you, I mean, when you had just come to India and I see you now, there's a huge transformation. And I also heard that there was a drastic, food journey that you went through to become, who you are or how you are today. From the time you lived in the US to after coming back to India, can you elaborate on that journey?
I think so. I mean, see, the idea was that when growing up in the States, it was largely a very blue collar living that I did, and you get used to sort of this very like on the go student rough lifestyle. You forgot to have lunch, so you just have Cheetos.
Okay.
Things of that nature.
Okay.
So, the only thing that really kept me even some semblance of in shape was the idea that I wanted to go into movies someday.
Okay.
And I remember right before I shot my first film, Karma, I sort of lost all this weight and I was very careful. And the moment we were in post-production where we'd come to India, that's when you'd met me.
Right.
I just bloated.
Okay.
And because I didn't even know that there is such a thing as the right food habits, there is such a thing, And I come from California, where everyone is healthy. So in that sense, I guess it was my own, blindness to the world and only focusing on film. And I think when I came here, when I saw many people, including you, I started seeing that people had a way they lived. I saw that Nagsar had a way that he lived. And I saw all these people that I started meeting and I saw that they had a way that they lived, and I realized that not a lot of it requires money.
Yes. I'm glad you said that. Yes.
Yeah, it's emotional investment. Do you care about your face enough? Do you care about your health enough? Do you care not to waste?
Right.
So I think that's how it began.
So when you said waste, I also know you are a need-based consumer and a shopper.
Yes.
And you lived in the US, and it's all about how they market, and the number of years you're there are from 11 to early 20s, if I'm not.
Yeah, I was there for about 15 years, from about 10 to 25.
Yeah. So most of your formative years and aspiring years, like the teen years and the early 20s, you were there, and still you were not lured by the marketing or any of that sort. How did you keep yourself away from that?
I think it was a mix of already having sort of family practice with what, again, that inquisitive nature I had. As a family, we're vegetarian, just because tradition and all that. So I think I just never got around to eating meat, even growing up in the States.
Okay.
And to be honest, it's easier for me to find vegetarian food of different cuisines in California than it is in Hyderabad.
Really?
Yeah, Hyderabad lo inti vanta is fine.
Yes.
But anything else,
Right.
any other cuisine, finding vegetarian becomes very tough.
Good choices for vegetarian
Good
against
choices,
become.
healthy choices. So so the vegetarian part was already edged. I think again, the ideas are like worms, right? They start going into your head. So I remember watching, I think Mangal Pandey, the Amir Khan film, and I didn't like the film very much, but I remember watching the film, and obviously the 1857 uprising started because of the pork grease on the guns, right?
Oh yes.
Yes, it was very offensive to Indians of all religions because they didn't want. Then I wondered, but then today we all wear leather as belts. So as a culture, I know people in my family who are vegetarian, but they're wearing leather shoes and leather belts. So how does that work?
Okay.
You're not okay eating an animal, but you're okay wearing its skin. So that became a very interesting question for me.
I remember when I first met you also, I don't know how the conversation came up, but you said I don't use leather. I was very surprised, and this was like 8 years ago or
Yes.
something. So you're a vegetarian, teetotaler. I see a lot of virtues. You're quite virtuous as a person.
Oh no, I have my vices. They're just not in the substance area.
Yeah, but still, like,
Yeah,
and if you see, your percentages are very high.
Yes. Yes.
How did you become this clean, green gentleman?
Well, I think the not the not drinking, not smoking, not ever trying drugs of any sort. All that came from a sense of fear. I have to admit.
Okay.
This idea. I have one of those personalities that if I like something, I will do it a lot.
Okay.
And my worry always was, I take a sip of that really nice single malt scotch, and then what happens if I really like it? So, and I think I stress out so much when I work on film. There's already something I do that I love that's
Right.
kind of bad for my health.
Also, you stress so much.
I do.
I'll come back to that again.
So
yeah.
there was always that.
Ah,
And then, these other habits in terms of living, it started only out of these questions. So I'd say, Amma, Nana, you say we should be vegetarian, but we're wearing leather. How does that work? So early on when I'd moved to India, I had this dilemma. Do I apply my values inside a film? I can't, because you're playing a character.
Correct. Ah,
So I keep my value system outside of film.
okay.
Because in film, if I'm pretending to be a murderer, it doesn't mean I'm going to murder someone outside.
That's right.
So I keep my value system outside, but yeah, I avoid leather completely. I wear fake leather. I also, I don't mean to sound racist when I say this, but I try not to wear or buy made in China products for the reason that there's a lot of wastage, and there's no a lot of these companies, including Nike. A lot of these companies, they don't necessarily, when they build their factories in places like China, they don't necessarily have the right ways of disposing the waste there. There's no control of the pollution, of the bad water that goes out, and things of that nature.
Oh, so before you pick up something, you also look into the brand and the practices.
I do.
Wow, that's
and that can
wonderful.
get very tiring.
It is, yeah, it can. So you have to
Yeah.
stick to few brands and just probably
I
stay
do,
with
like
them.
all of my sneakers and all of my sort of track wear and gym wear, it's all Puma. I stick to that. Not that I'm
Okay.
endorsing them in any way, but I try to stick to sort of traditional Indian brands. Like this is like recycled cotton or whatever,
Wow.
things of that nature. I also, in fact, I remember a couple of years ago, I remember tweeting, I said, is there a smartphone that's actually Indian made? and there
Okay.
isn't.
So you would have chosen that
Yeah.
had there been one.
So things of that nature. So this value system, it's an ever evolving thing. I don't know that what I say in this interview can be held to me 5 years from now, but this is how I feel at the moment.
Sesh, I've seen you posting and sharing adoption stories on your Instagram, and I see that there's a lot of compassion for animals. And I also heard from your dear ones that if you see an injured animal on the road, you can't just let it be and leave and go away, and you have to help it out.
I
When did
think,
you nurture this
you know, it
compassion?
actually started from a human being for me. I think what happened was
Okay.
in 2010, I moved to India to pursue a career in the movies, right? In 2009, I came for a month just to see, can I understand India? You know, I only know India as the place you visit, you're staying at a cousin's place, everyone gets you food. It's very different from when you're living alone.
Right.
And I remember in 2009, I'd visit I'd visited my aunt's place in Chennai, and I was just going for a walk, and I saw this old man lying on the road, his head bleeding, and sort of there was a crack in his skull, and it would look really bad.
Oh.
And there was a bunch of people standing around, they were all looking, and no one's doing anything. So I wasn't sure what to do. But I know that some guys were like throwing some water, putting some soda on his face, and that sort of thing. So I thought, you got to get him to a hospital. And at that time, especially, there was this thing about like, oh, you know, if you take them, then the hospital authorities or the police, they instantly suspect that you are the one who hit them with your car, and things of that nature. And so no one was willing to help me. I was just a tourist in India. I didn't have a car.
Right.
So I finally flagged down an auto. No one would stop. The fifth auto we stopped finally did. And luckily, one of the guys in the crowd, this guy on a motorcycle, said, I'll also come with you.
Okay.
I said, okay. So he helped me carry this man. I was wearing this brand new white shirt, and his blood is all over my shirt. And I'm holding his head in my lap, and we go to the hospital. And instantly, like people were saying, the people at the government hospital in Chennai, they were suspecting that I did something. But I kept thinking, you and I are arguing about this, but this guy's bleeding. He might die. He looks older. You know, we were eventually able to sort of get him into a government ward, and nobody was telling me what kind of treatment they would do for him until, if you can believe this, 3 beds over in that government ward, somebody recognized this guy, somebody who's also a patient,
Okay.
and said, I know his family, let me call them.
Okay.
And that's how this guy ended up getting saved. And I didn't speak Tamil.
Okay.
I spoke Telugu and English, and you know, they didn't understand Hindi.
Right.
So it was just this very intense moment where I was like, okay, there is a chance that if stuff happens in our country, no one's going to be around. Guys like me, we get privileged, we get to call our families. What if you don't have someone in your
Correct.
family at that
Yes.
moment? And then it struck me that animals never have someone they can call.
True.
And I don't know if it's just visible to me, but I think in the 10 years I've lived in India, in Hyderabad, it's been 4 times that I've seen an animal lying on the road. And I think people don't mean to avoid. I think what happens is a car's going, a dog doesn't know when to cross, it suddenly gets hit by a
Right.
car. And now you're driving, you don't know what to do, so you just keep going.
Right.
Because it's almost like you're scared, you don't even know. So people just keep going. It's not even that they don't care, I think. I started calling everyone I knew, you know, sometimes I've called Amla Garu, sometimes I've called different people, like, what do we do about this dog? I call Dr. Ranjita, she's a vet in near Langar House on that side,
Okay.
because 2 of the dogs that I found were on that side.
Okay.
And often enough, I don't know why, but it's always like I find them at like 2 in the morning when nothing's open. I guess the recent one was near the Jubilees checkpost. There was this dog, and you know, he was just lying there. And suddenly, when I asked people, they said, yeah, he'd been lying there for 2 days.
Oh no.
So then, of course, Dr. Lakshmi, she's got like a famous
Right.
vet clinic very close by.
I know Lakshmi.
Yeah,
My
so-
dogs go there.
Yeah, so you know, this Teja, there's this animal activist.
Yes.
Now there's no actual ambulance for animals in Hyderabad. So literally, as far as I know, Teja is the only ambulance. He'll come in his little auto/truck,
Okay.
get an animal, and then take to a vet or a
Okay.
hospital.
Wow.
So he and his friends and his brother. So he picked up the phone call. I was just calling a bunch of numbers, and he took with me the dog to Dr. Lakshmi.
Okay.
Teja has this animal website that he keeps posting about different adoptions, and I keep sharing them. That's how you ended up.
This is very, very touchy. You know,
Sorry, was
this.
that a heavy duty answer?
No, no,
I didn't mean
but
to.
it was beautiful. Thank you for sharing that story. Sesh, I also know that you carry your own water bottle,
I do, yes.
and you know, in many ways, you're sustainable. Did you bring in any more practices into your lifestyle to stay that way? And would you also say a few things to people who are watching this show as to how to you know, try and be sustainable with simple practices that they can start immediately being home?
I think the simplest practice, which we as Indians, we all know this, is it's important to dispose of trash properly. The same Indians, when we go to London, when we go to Australia, when we go to even Sri Lanka, we'll go make sure we find a trash can and sort of throw our waste away. But we don't have a way of disposing our waste many times, so I see people flinging stuff out of their cars all the time. I know we know not to do it, but I don't think we know why. I think what I want to tell people is that nothing happens with that waste. Half the time it doesn't get picked up. And eventually, slowly goes into our water. And the water untreated goes into Hussain Sagar, or in Vizag it'll go into the ocean.
Right.
So in India, our sewage treatment isn't as healthy as it should be. And so what ends up happening is a lot of the waste we throw on the ground, we think we're only throwing one cup or one plastic spoon or one piece of paper, but that usually ends up in the water.
Right.
You know, varshal padta, and then the water sort of goes into the drain. From there, all the stuff just flows out that way. So that's something I've tried to imbibe in my film crews.
Okay.
Since about Kshanam, I think, every time we're shooting, oftentimes we'll be shooting in these beautiful locations like in Vikarabad, like these forest locations. There'll be
Right.
trash everywhere. So what we do is we go ahead and pick up
Okay.
at the end of the day. You know, I try and force on as less use of plastic as possible.
Right.
Because in India, a lot of plastic bottles and plastic glasses are single-use plastic.
Correct.
So they're never recycled. So I try to say, if you bring your own bottle, you don't have to use a plastic bottle to drink water. However, I have to admit, all of this was before the COVID pandemic. I think it became so much of a struggle to try and use recyclable material or use your own things when you're trying to make sure you don't touch someone's hand or you don't come close to them. So I realized the practical issues as well, you know. And so I think it's important to look at it on a case-by-case basis.
Okay.
And the best we can do is sort of have the switch on in our head, is there a better way to do it?
Okay.
You know, do I have to bring small plastic bottles?
So questioning your actions or the usage of, you know, the things that we use in our day-to-day lives.
Absolutely, that, and I think one more thing we also never realize is the way we consume fast food. There's always this usage of plastic knives and plastic forks,
Right.
knives and plastic forks and napkins. So, whenever I order from a restaurant, I try to call the restaurant directly and ask if they have these sort of bamboo spoons or you know, little cutlery made of cheap wood, essentially.
Right. The bark of, you know,
Yeah,
even
the bark,
yeah.
bamboo
Correct.
utensils, bark utensils, because that stuff, honestly, it's stronger
That's true.
and it lasts longer. I can use it more than once.
Can
And
you?
yeah, and it doesn't
okay.
feel cheap. You know, like
Yeah.
I feel like
the way you feel using plastic.
yeah,
right?
like when you open a plastic box or when you hold a plastic fork or a plastic knife, it feels cheap. It feels
Right.
like it's not valuable,
Right.
which is in such a contrast to when we were kids. You know, all these middle class mothers would take the plastic bags and save them
Right. Yes.
because at that time they thought plastic is valuable. We don't believe that anymore.
True.
So it's important that we try and avoid using plastic cutlery and plastic bags as much as we can.
So if you have to define sustainability in a sentence, how would you put it?
To have a conscious conscience.
Wow,
You
that
know,
was beautiful.
Our conscience often tells us we shouldn't litter. It
Right.
tells us that we shouldn't do this.
That voice is always there, but then we kind of
Yeah, right. So
put
the
it
idea is
down.
to just be a bit conscious. I think just when you're a bit conscious, automatically, without any major change in your life, you end up making
Right.
these changes.
Yeah, often when I speak to people, they stress out like sustainability is, you have to look into little things. It makes them stressful. But what you just said is so easy because it's just you, and then you have to just switch that in you. That's
Yeah,
all.
and a bit of advice for sort of young people, like young guys, for example. We love our shoes, right? So I oftentimes, when I'm shopping for dress shoes of sorts, whether I'm going to Bata, whether I'm going to Aldo, whether I'm going to somewhere else, I try and look for the dress shoe that is not made of leather.
Yeah, these days you can't really tell, even the ones which are non-leather look fabulous.
Yes, and as you can see, I wear non-leather only. So it's very easy to find dress shoes and things of that nature for interviews that are not made of leather. That's something I want to tell young guys and gals. It's
I
very easy
s-
to find good-looking handbags and purses
Right.
that are not made of leather.
We're all switching.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a journey, and then the more conscious you become, I think the choices also become conscious.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So, Sage, according to you, what kind of role can entrepreneurs have in this subject?
I think it really depends on the industry. I come from film where there's generally a lot of wastage on a film set. The amount of water, food, plastic we throw away is incredible. So I think on a personal note, as someone from the film business, I try to encourage the idea that we need to be as conservative as possible in terms of how much we're wasting
Right.
things. But I also feel in general, when we talk about any industry, just to have this idea of tailoring your product in a way that it doesn't increase too much wastage. If you're a restaurant, can you offer cutlery that's made of bark or bamboo? Can you offer paper straws instead of plastic straws?
Right.
If you're a clothing manufacturer, can you try and use dye that's friendly to the environment, that doesn't pollute the water?
Right.
Things of that nature. I think each industry has its own sort of very specific things that they can do without much cost to them, if they only ask, how can I be a bit better?
Absolutely right.
Another personal note I feel is I feel like just in the last 2-3 years I've seen so many apartment buildings come up. Especially when I look at some of these middle class apartment buildings, they never have sort of these rainwater harvesting pits.
Correct.
There's no way for them to collect water because they live in places where water just floods.
Right.
So having pits ensures that your parking lots and your lobbies don't get flooded, because we now have rains that just flood our cities.
Now we don't even know what kind of a rain going to hit us.
Yeah, so it's important to have a rainwater harvesting pit in your independent home or in your apartment building, and it's very cheap to do so. Probably costs about 1.5 lakhs to build a rainwater harvesting pit to the right specifications. If there's 15-20 apartments, each of them puts 10,000 rupees, they can put it together, and everyone can come together to take care of it, and you can ensure that your parking lot for your cars doesn't get flooded.
Wow, that's brilliant the way you put it. And then I think this is something no one spoke about on my show, and I'm glad you did.
I learned this from Chinmay, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So Sesh, now the whole world is, economy driven. And in the name of economy, I think there's a lot of damage caused to ecology. So will there be a balance, or can there be a balance in the way we conduct our business?
I think so. I think so much of what our culture originally taught us is about balance. It's not about extremes. And I think a lot of normal, everyday folk, people who sort of work in a bank, people who work in offices, they look at environmentalists, or people even like me who are not necessarily environmentalists, but people who speak about the environment. They might even look at this interview and think of it as something those people do. So I think the idea of our culture was so much about balance. There were so many inherent cultural things that we had
Right.
that was based on balance, that was based on not wasting. Just the little things of, పేడ గోడకి ఎందుకు వేస్తారు, things of that nature, how they use cow dung for the soil again, for tilling
Right.
in their own gardens. So I think it's so important for people to understand that you can find easy ways not to damage the environment without costing you anything. And today, perhaps because climate change has caused so much loss to humanity and in general business, right?
Right.
A building gets destroyed in Miami, all sorts of things.
Right.
It's important that we look at it from a space of maybe even promoting it. I think the business today that can promote that they are more kind to the environment actually has an edge over the business that doesn't.
Yes.
I know a lot of people who are starting to prefer going to one of those new age fusion Indian restaurants rather than going to your average fast food place, because the price is the same, but you just feel a bit better inside that you're eating healthier and that you're promoting a healthier way of doing business.
So you lived in America and
I
of
did,
course
yeah.
in India. What is the difference as to how these both countries look at sustainability?
You know,
I personally feel we are more sustainable than the Western countries. The
I
wastage.
agree. I agree. You know, I just got back from the States and I was there for 40 days. And when I was there, I just realized how much of the American system is driven by the idea of making money. Like that is all it's driven by. I think we as a culture originally were not driven by that at all. And as capitalism becomes more and more popular in the world, what we are saying is we're trying to imitate the idea that that's what's cool.
Right.
So I think in many ways American companies have done way more damage to the environment there than people realize. And
Right.
and I think because they've done so much damage, there is such a conscious objection to them and trying to save the environment over there. That's why this idea of sort of tree huggers or these environmentalists in the West started, because they saw how much damage was being done.
That's right.
So I think we don't realize that just because of the way we are as a culture, we never did that level of damage to our landscape. We're trying to now.
Yeah, exactly.
In the idea of capitalism, in the pursuit of money, I think we end up, we're trying to ape that because we look at the shiny new building that was built
Right.
in New York, and we look at that as something to aspire to. But I think progress is within. I think we shouldn't try to aspire to their money-making methods.
Absolutely.
I think we should aspire to finding that balance, which is who we are originally.
Yeah, we should sustain that.
For sure, for sure. And I think they're looking towards us for that in many ways.
Yeah, true. Very true. So, do you have a fitness regime?
I have to be the first one to admit that if I wasn't in the movie business, I would be extremely out of shape and extremely overweight.
I don't
Because
think so.
no, it's true, it's true.
Really?
I love, as I said, when I was, especially 10 years ago, I loved Snickers, I loved Cheetos, I loved Twix, I loved Cadbury,
Oh, sweet tooth.
sweet tooth, salt tooth, all sort of unhealthy tooth, really. And now that I think about it, I think that my profession has forced me to be in shape for characters. When I'm doing a film like Major right now, I'm playing an army officer. I'm playing an army major who's a training officer for a lot of other cadets.
Oh, okay.
So you need to look the part, and it's a
part.
real man. I have to honor him.
Right.
So my profession has forced me to become healthy, but
Okay.
now I've come to a stage where I'm enjoying the healthy lifestyle.
Wow.
A lot of people don't realize that we feel full about half an hour after we finish eating. So many times when we're eating, we tend to keep eating until we feel full, when we
Right.
actually felt full about 20 minutes ago.
That's right.
So I think one of the things I've taken into mind is to eat only as much as I think would be enough.
Right. Okay.
I just think that one change changes you.
Absolutely.
And we were largely an agrarian society, agriculture. So it made sense to eat a lot of simple carbs before you went out into the field.
Right. Right.
So before you sort of go and work in your farm and your field, it made sense to eat a lot of rice
That's
and a little
true.
bit of pachadi and a little bit of kura. But when we live in cities and we go and work at an IT job, or I'm going to a film set, or you're going to a hospital to work, or you're going to a bank to work, you have no field.
Right.
So I tell all of my friends and anyone who listens, you don't need that much white rice.
Correct. Yeah, there's no way we're going to burn it all off.
You're not. So bring down the amount of rice, increase the amount of tukura.
Yeah, I say that. I'm glad you're saying it too.
Bring down the amount of oil in your food.
Right.
And I find olive oil, different kinds of olive oil, to be good even for Indian cooking.
Yes, that's true.
Rather than your standard sort of Indian cooking oil,
Wow, you've come a long way.
That I learned from my mom. I can't cook for nuts. So, just these little things I've learned over the years. And I love my chocolates even now. But what I do is I eat one, and I think I enjoy that.
And relish it.
Yeah, I relish it.
Okay.
And that's something I learned about from from reading about A.N.R. Garu.
Okay.
Who had this amazing way of eating, who would eat anything that he wanted, but eat a little bit.
So portion control.
Portion control, but also just to be able to say, is this enough?
That's enough, yeah. Okay, wow.
So you make that a habit, it becomes easy.
Right.
Plus you look better.
Yeah, that's, it's an outcome, but people don't realize that. They think they're sacrificing something, but then, what you get after, the benefits are numerous.
Yeah, for all of our youngsters who love their Instagrams and even their WhatsApp statuses, you get to have a better looking photograph.
True. Without using the apps.
Yeah, without using the apps. Yeah.
Okay. So Sesh, as a person, I know you are so friendly, so easy, so chill, and you're okay. I mean, you're not like fussy at all. But when I see your films and the kind of characters you portray, not just as an actor, I heard you look into every little minute details, about the film. And I don't know if I should use this word, but you're quite an alpha on the movie set.
I think there's like 2 directors who are about to see this and not going to offer me a film anymore.
Okay, no, maybe that's not the right, not in a gender specific way, but generally like aggressive. So how do you bring this contrast?
I'm not by nature a very fussy person.
At all.
But I am extremely fussy about film. I'm very hard to please, even to myself. So, unfortunately, the film industry is plagued with certain people who show egos to people who are less powerful.
Right.
What people don't realize is I am my worst enemy. I am hard on the people who work for me, but I'm the hardest on myself.
Okay.
And all of this because I consider the idea of making movies, the idea of living, or the idea of pretending to be different people, and that is what people pay me for.
Right.
And I'm not called a thief for doing that. I find that to be a very, very big privilege.
Okay.
And it's an honor. I don't come from a film family. I struggled very hard to be able to have the ability to say, I can act, to be able to have a producer or a director or even the audience look at me with credibility and say, this is the guy I want to pay 150 rupees to go watch him. I will pay him 150 rupees to sit there for 2 or 3 hours and have him tell me what he thinks. I consider it to be a massive honor.
Right.
And my profession demands that I give it that kind of respect. I often find every film of mine, there are certain assistant directors who drop out within the first 2-3 weeks because they think of film as sort of, it's about dances and it's about, babugiri and trying to impress the one hero. Even on the set of Major, you will often find me carrying sandbags which hold the lights down.
Okay.
And I often see, the track and trolley guys and the crane guys, they've been carrying stuff all day. Their shoulders hurt.
Right.
A lot of these guys are middle-aged men with no exercise.
Right.
So their shoulders hurt. So they're sitting there. We need to move quickly. The moment I pick up 2 camera equipment pieces, they'll all rush and pick it up.
Wow.
So now, if I yell saying, come on, we need to move quickly, I'm yelling it with 2 big pieces of camera equipment in my hand. So they don't have a right to say, oh, మీరు పెద్దోళ్ళండి మీరు అరుస్తారు మీరు ఉన్నోళ్ళండి మీరు అరుస్తారు.
Wow.
So the moment they see that, it's like this incredible amount of respect that they feel and I feel toward them, because even I read, the moment I lift it, like, holy hell, this is heavy. No wonder they're sitting down.
Right. In fact, Amla was on my show as well, and she said the same thing. You know, unless you get down and start doing things, your staff do not look at you with respect.
Yeah.
Well, it's easy to ask them to do things, but if you yourself are not being a part of it, you cannot demand the kind of respect you should be demanding from
Absolutely,
them.
absolutely. And I get to do this on films that I do as passion projects, which is Gudachari, Major.
Right.
But on films like Yavaru or films like Hit 2 that I'm doing as an actor,
Okay.
where I didn't write the script.
Okay.
I am an actor who's been hired to be as part of someone else's vision. I have to be very careful not to step on anybody's toes.
Yeah, that's true.
So I don't give myself the opportunity to go lift a camera bag on that set.
Right.
So
Yeah, we'll be stepping boundaries.
yeah, because
right?
then they'll think you know. So I'm very careful when it's my film that I wrote,
Right.
that it's my dream project, where it's a Gudachari or a Kshanam or a Major,
Right.
or the next Gudachari 2 that we're doing the end of
I'm
this year.
waiting for that.
I have to still write it, yeah. All of those, I'm on it.
Okay.
But when it's like Yavaru or Hit 2, I make sure that I try to be only an actor who's listening and trying to fit into someone else's vision.
You speak such good English. Sorry, Telugu. English, of course.
Ante, yeah, Telugu I'm proud of, yeah.
Yeah, and I've seen you for the longest time, and I saw you first speak in Telugu, and only if it's necessary that you speak in English. And I felt like, wow, this is like you have such regard for the language and such command over your language. Do you consciously choose not to speak in English unless and until it's necessary?
I do.
And why is that?
I think it started because I was in the States. When I was in the US, especially my initial years, I didn't fit in very well. I had a very sort of Indo-British accent when I spoke English.
Okay.
So all the American kids couldn't understand me. I'd use the word odd. They would use the word weird.
Oh, okay.
Just
Right.
the way they spoke English was very different. So, and the Indian kids were all in the English as a second language program. They'd come from villages in India. So they didn't speak English. I didn't speak Hindi. So I had no one to speak to.
Right.
So my world became films.
Okay.
I learned how to read and write Telugu from DVD covers.
Really?
Yeah, you know, Ja, gentleman, Ja was my first Telugu letter that I learned.
Oh, so you learnt the language to write and read on your own?
Yeah, essentially.
Wow.
I don't write it very well, but I can read it.
Read, okay.
So that's why I struggle to read written Telugu, but printed Telugu I flow through easy. So I can
Okay.
read a newspaper much faster than I can read someone's letter.
handwritten.
So that's how it started.
Wow.
And then I realized that I wanted this sort of Indian identity that was very important to me. My grandfather's a freedom fighter.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it's like you come from a freedom fighters family, how can you not feel proud about India? You know, that was there a lot. And all the IT boom hadn't started yet in the States. All our, you know, sort of H1 visas from Hyderabad, Guntur, Vijayawada, none of them came.
Okay.
It was only Punjabis and Gujaratis,
Okay.
you know, who worked in petrol bunks or gas stations, in hotels, motels, and things of that nature. So for me to be able to speak to these friends, I needed to learn how to speak Hindi.
Okay.
So I learned Telugu. I spoke a lot of Telugu at home
Okay.
to feel Indian. I spoke a lot of Hindi outside to feel Indian.
Okay.
And that's how my command over both languages
It's so strong.
sort of, I don't know if it's strong. I sound okay. I think my vocabulary is limited. Like,
Okay.
you know,
No, the
often
pronunciations and all of that I see, it's
yeah,
very
I'm proud of
pure.
that.
Yeah,
I'm proud of that.
It's really good.
In fact, some of my cousins have at times teased me and said, "Don't pronounce it so clearly because, "Arey, mari teacher la maatladutunnaru."
Okay.
So I intentionally dumb down my Telugu sometimes.
Okay.
I will use the word "ra" to make other people feel comfortable,
Right.
but I don't feel comfortable saying it.
Okay.
If I spoke Telugu the way I'm completely comfortable, a lot of people would think I sound like a professor. But that's only because I learnt it only speaking to my parents.
And did they insist that you spoke Telugu at home?
Not so much, but it just became part of our dynamic. You know, Prati Vinayak Chavati puja untundi. You're sitting in the States, it's not like there's going to be some pandit who's going to come and do your puja.
Right.
Maname cheskovali. Dad gives me the Telugu pustakam because he's tired of reading. He'll say, Chadura. So I'm like, oh bloody hell, I have to read this now. Okay, so I'm like, okay, Lambodara, etc., etc.
Okay.
Gayatri Mantra chadatam. So it becomes part of your etiquette to try and
Wow.
be a good son. And that sort of
Right.
saved me. I also think that it's sort of cool to pretend like you don't speak Telugu very well now.
Yeah, I mean, people do that here.
And I don't understand that. Because in the States, my whole life, I was trying to learn Telugu. Because English came easy to me. I think in English by default.
Okay.
So here I am, I've spent my entire life trying to learn a language, to be in touch with my culture. But when I come to India, people who are part of my culture find it interesting to speak to me in English.
Right. No, I was in that space too. When I first met, I'm like, why is he not talking in English? And that fascinated me. But now I have high regards for that. And I think that what you're doing is fabulous, and, having that identity and
Yeah, I
holding
think
that culture.
even when you spoke to me about this interview, I messaged you saying, is it in English? Because I assumed since we're both Telugu, it's in Telugu. But when you said it was in English, I assumed that it would actually be better, because then someone from Mumbai, someone from Delhi, someone from Calcutta, someone from Tamil Nadu who doesn't speak Telugu or Hindi, they'll understand
That's
this.
the whole intention.
Yeah,
I
so-
wanted this, because sustainability applies to everybody, and I wanted anyone across the world, if they come across this video, understand what we're
Which is
speaking
precisely
about.
why I'm happy to do it in English.
Thank you.
But still, it is a bit of a struggle for me
Huh.
when I'm seeing you to hold back the Telugu.
That's
It is a struggle.
I
So
know.
sometimes in this interview, it has slipped out.
No, I know. We never spoke in English for so long, I
Yeah,
think,
so,
up till now. But thank you for doing this for me.
Yeah.
You have a great female following.
Oh, okay.
You're the kind of person every woman wants to settle down with. What
So I'm
is
the nice guy versus the bad boy. Okay, got it.
so? What is your take on women empowerment?
The politically correct thing to say is, you're all for it and things of that nature. But I have to admit, it's been a steep learning curve for me the last couple of years, especially, to understand truly on how many levels in both Indian and Western society women have it rough. And I realized that when I was in high school,
Okay.
I was taught certain things that were unconsciously sort of not great to women. So I think my greatest take on women's empowerment is my ability to look inward. It starts with treating the women in your life better.
Right. True.
And I think as I get older, I realize that any being, any human being that can grow a life within them and give birth to a child is always going to be infinitely more valuable to the universe than a hunter or gatherer, which is what men are. We're meant to protect, like when we were cavemen,
Right.
we were meant to protect, we were meant to go find food.
That's right.
And the reason we were meant to go find food was because if we die, it's okay. The
Okay. I know
the
what you're
species continues.
saying. Right.
And the reason, I think when I think of that idea, I think it's so important for us as men and human beings to be able to look within ourselves to see how we treat the women in our lives.
That's right.
And that, I believe, is the first step to empowering women.
Sesh, are you spiritual? And your idea about spirituality?
I was. I still am, but I think I was also spiritual in a ritualistic sense earlier. Ante manam ee roju పూజ చేసామా,
Right.
కృష్ణాష్టమి అంటే ప్రాపర్గా మనం చదవాల్సిన శ్లోకాలు చదివామా, దట్ సార్ట్ ఆఫ్ an idea. But I believe in God as much as anyone. I mean,
You
like
have. Who is on that?
Yeah, it's just this beautiful little om.
Okay. Yeah, I see it
But
now.
it's like a steel om. I don't wear like gold.
Gold.
So,
Okay.
I guess it is part of my spirituality. I think as I get older, I'm looking more into the philosophical side rather than do we have a plastic Hanuman inside our car,
Right.
or did we ante nimmakai pettara car start chek mundu. I think
Not
that
the ritualistic ways.
right, and also because I don't know the reason for a lot of the ritual. And when I ask, the people in the temple don't know either.
That was my problem growing up as well.
Yeah, it's like the funniest thing, I'd always wonder, gummaniki enduku yellow paint vesevaru, and I'd always ask that because pasupu laga undali. Well, I always thought, well, then why can't we just put the pasupu? Why can't we actually put the turmeric on the gummam rather than the yellow paint? But now apparently a lot of apartments, they don't allow the yellow turmeric because it looked not great. So they say paint.
Oh, the aesthetics.
Yeah.
Oh no.
So things of that nature.
But there's a purpose behind why we put.
It's an antibacterial.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I find I like the idea of praying, and I like the idea of spirituality from a sense of the philosophical side of it rather than just the ritualistic side of it. That's the long and short answer, I think.
To me, you come across as a spiritually enhanced person. I'm saying this because you have heightened conscious and the way you look at things. That is spirituality, actually.
I didn't tell her to say this about me.
Because I'm inclined towards that side. I see,
right. Right.
The space you're operating
you're a yogini,
from.
Yeah.
No, I'm not a yogi. But I know the space you're operating from, and it's beautiful.
Thank you.
A person who is spiritually involved, I don't think they need to be told, do this, do not do this, don't harm this. And I see that in you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, on a lighter note.
Yeah.
If not for films, what would you have been?
I'd have been a writer.
Okay. So you knew that all along.
Yeah, I knew that right when I was working on my first film. I had this incredibly stressful day, incredibly stressful. It was, people were screaming on set at each other. There was a big fight on set. It was in the States. I was shooting my first Telugu film. I'm the only Telugu guy on set. It's a bunch of American crew. Everyone's fighting each other. And I'd done a bad job of sort of keeping the set properly.
Okay.
And this was my first film that I directed. And
this is the...
Karma, yeah.
Okay, the very first.
So my very first film, not many people saw it. But I remember having a really bad day, and I remember thinking, I just can't wait to be done with this film. I'm never making movies again. Now, a lot of filmmakers, actors, when they have bad moments on set, or if they have a bad experience on a film, they end up thinking, I'm quitting. They just never say it.
They just feel it that way.
They feel it in that moment. And I felt it, like so many. Scorsese has felt it. The practical part of me asked, that night I felt it. The next morning I said, okay, if you're not going to make movies, what are you going to do? You're not very good at being things like a doctor or an engineer. You suck at academic subjects. And I realized that I could write. And that stuck.
Okay.
So I know that if I wasn't an actor, I'd be a writer of novels.
Okay.
And maybe even a journalist. I don't know.
But you still write for your movie, few of your movies.
For few of my films. It started as a necessity, but it's become something I enjoy. It started as a necessity because when you're first starting out, you don't come from any sort of a known background. The audience doesn't know you. Why should they trust some random face they've never met? And when I came to Hyderabad, a lot of people didn't even believe I was Telugu, so they'd speak to me in Hindi. So the moment they're doing that, they're also thinking, "Idu manodu kaadu." That's what they're doing, really.
That's true.
So there was no reason for anyone to trust me. There was no reason for a producer to say, let me hire this guy to be my lead actor. Let me hire this guy to be my hero. So I wrote myself my stories.
Okay.
Because no one else was giving me them.
Oh, it started like that?
It started like that. And now it's become this thing where I actually creatively and emotionally enjoy the process.
Right.
But I need the breathing space. Okay. I don't want to write every year.
It was beautiful. The conversation was fabulous. I thoroughly enjoyed speaking with you. Before we end, I have a rapid choice round. It's a very simple, you have to just choose one from what I'm going to ask you.
Oh, okay. All right.
It's all about nature. So
I have to warn you that I have miserably failed a lot of rapid.
No, this is not, it's a choice.
You know,
rapid
when you're playing
choice.
games with friends, like, I always mess them up. Anyway, go ahead. Yeah.
No, I didn't want you to stress this. So it's just a choice. I'll just give you two and you have to just choose one. So mountains or beaches?
Beaches.
Grasslands or forests?
Forests.
Caves or valleys?
Caves.
Birds or animals?
Aren't birds animals?
But birds are birds, animals are animals. Come on, now don't confuse me.
Animals, yeah.
Animals. Plant or a tree?
Trees.
Right.
The redwoods in California.
I have never been there.
The tallest trees in the world.
Yeah, I saw the picture, but never been there. You been there?
Yeah.
Wow.
We shot for Karma there, yeah.
Water or fire?
Water.
Sun or the moon?
The moon. I write better at night. That's why I say it.
Okay. Roses or lilies?
Lilies.
Fruits, veggies?
Fruit. I hate vegetables.
Okay.
But I eat
Farming,
for health.
right. Would you like to farm or garden?
Garden.
Sunrise or sunset?
Sunset.
Rivers or oceans?
Rivers.
Rain or the snow?
Rain.
Rain. Biking or trekking?
Biking.
Camp or a cottage?
Cottage any day. Hot chocolate in the cottage.
Oh my God. House or a farmhouse?
Farmhouse.
City,
I've often wondered why people who have farmhouses in Hyderabad don't just live in the farmhouse.
City or a village?
Town.
Town? Okay. Skydiving or scuba diving?
Scuba diving.
Have you done it?
No, but I'm scared of heights, so I'll never skydive.
Okay. Summer or winter?
Indian winter, California summer.
Okay. Salad or a smoothie?
Smoothie.
Okay. That's it. Simple, right? No stress. We have a lovely hamper that we put together for you from Yellow Verandah.
Okay, all right.
Hope you all enjoyed my conversation with Sesh. Please do subscribe to my channel and do not miss any updates. See you all next week. Signing off, Shilpa Reddy.